Hello and welcome to our Transitioning Back to School webinar. If you are a parent of a neurodivergent child and they are starting school soon or recently started, you are in the right place. My name is Megan from Stowell Learning Center, and we are so happy to have you here, either watching live or viewing this on the recording. We have a lot of amazing strategies for parents that we will be discussing today. So please type in your questions in the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible over the next 60 minutes. We had a last minute change for our host. So Lauren Ma, our Director of Growth and Operations, will be hosting our webinar tonight. And we are so grateful to have Lauren here today so we could deliver this webinar to you today. So thank you so much, Lauren. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you for having me. I was really excited about tonight's event to be a participant and a viewer. So now I get to be an even more active viewer. So I'm glad to be here. I'm really excited about tonight's topic. Definitely in our centers, we know that the transition back to school can be a really stressful time for both students and parents. And so the work that we do at the Stowell Learning Center is we help to develop the skills, the underlying skills of our neurodiverse population and work alongside them so that they feel comfortable and confident for those transitions back to school. Like Megan said, my name is Lauren Ma. I'm the Director of Clinical Growth and Operations for the Stowell Learning Center. I am also a former teacher, so I do understand the other side of back to school as a teacher, prepping for the new school year, getting a new roster of students, new expectations, all those new beginnings. So if you're a teacher here with us tonight, welcome. We understand that is a transition for you as well, and hopefully you'll learn some tips and tricks for helping those neurodiverse students in your class this year. I'm so excited to be joined by Sherri. Sherri Ragan works with the neurodiverse community, coaching families and doing therapy with the neurodiverse population and their families. So we're really excited to learn from her tonight and, just kind of get some new tools in our toolbox. So thank you, Sherri, for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I have been working with the neurodivergent population since about 2009. And I started off as a BCBA LMFT intern, and it just has grown from then. And so from there, I've been working with the families, the parents, the children, ranging from like 18 months to adults in their 30s and older. And as I transitioned into the MFT world, I found that there was a niche specialization of just blending both worlds with mental health and just traditional, conventional mental health and the hardcore behavioral scene. And so it's been a pleasure working and seeing just the children grow and progress and being able to support them on their journey. And I'm thrilled to be here now to share some of these tips and strategies that have not only worked with my clients, but for myself as a parent. And so these strategies work for all children, but especially neurodivergent children, because it's very, very visual, very specific, very behavioral. And that's what I found to be the most helpful for this population. So let's just dive in. Okay, so transitioning back to school, here's some strategies. My goals are to, let's move on. Offer you some evidence-based strategies that are well established in the research for psychotherapy that helps to manage stress and anxiety. And secondly, to not only just learn these strategies, but be able to apply them immediately. So my hope is that they're functional and they're relevant to the needs of our families here, and they can start using them right after we're done, at least a couple of them, right? So let's just dive in. The benefits are going to also be that with this self-help webinar, it can be used as a supplement to professional one-on-one therapy. If some folks are in therapy themselves or if their children are, it offers practical parenting strategies for ongoing use. And ideally, once you start to become more fluent in these strategies, it's going to increase the caregiver's confidence and they leave feeling empowered. Empowered parenting is my ultimate goal.
That's really important. As a parent myself, please, more of that empowerment, please.
It feels so much better when you feel like you know what you're doing a little bit, right? So
Yeah, a little bit, maybe.
A little bit, right? It's still hard.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to share today 5 parenting strategies to aid in a smooth transition back to school. And these strategies are: 1, teaching social and emotional learning, creating routines, advanced planning and exposure through a process called desensitization, teaching problem-solving skills, and as a caregiver, using proactive communication to talk to your school team to support this process for your kiddos. So these are the main strategies, and I'm going to offer specific examples for the parents, for all you parents to be able to pick and choose what you think resonates with you and could be beneficial to you. So the first one is to teach social and emotional learning. But what is social and emotional learning? It's social emotional learning is a theory that a lot of school districts have adopted and have applied. They created this theory in the school setting, and they have found that it's crucial in developing self-awareness, self-control, interpersonal skills, meaning how do you get along with the people around you? And it's vital for their success at school. It's vital for their success in life and in work, eventually when they enter the workforce. And the benefits of learning social emotional learning is developing higher emotional IQ. Now, if you have higher emotional IQ, you are better equipped to cope with everyday challenges, and it allows for you just to have more success in general, and it improves self-esteem. So for the parents and caregivers joining us tonight, how do you teach social and emotional learning? I'm going to just teach you something very practical and easy. And it's just one, being mindful of the language that you use around this transition coming up. So know your perceptions about school starting. Watch how you express your feelings and thoughts about it around your children. Do you express it positively or negatively? Just do some self-monitoring and engage where you are with that. Are you as a parent having a lot of anxiety with this transition? And if so, how are you managing it? It's a perfect opportunity to use modeling as a strategy here. And so if you need to learn more about how to manage it, there's lots of resources available, working with professionals or just joining webinars like this, just to have a friendly reminder of like, just notice this. Or if, self-help courses, there's things out there to help you manage your own transition anxiety, because this transition is not only for the child, but it's for the whole family system, the whole unit. So being mindful of how it impacts everyone. And another way to develop social and emotional learning and to teach it is to encourage your kiddos to get involved at school ahead of time. So you talk about school activities, you talk about the clubs that are going to be offered, sports that are going to be there, because what you teach is that the world is safe outside of mom and dad or the caregivers, that there are coaches and teachers and support teams in place at school that are here specifically for you as a child. Like, you are safe here and we want you to be a part of this world, and therefore they learn how to engage and they learn interpersonal skills. They learn how they are challenged with different opportunities that help them grow and learn how to get along. So if you can see the connection of how that benefits a child growing up into adulthood, right? You start young. So this is a social emotional learning opportunity. It's just like, promote it. Let your children go out there and be part of this world and talk about it positively.
And that probably also gives them something to look forward to besides just the school part of school. I would imagine, that it's this community, right. There, these other things that some of our neurodivergent population might have strengths in. I know for my daughter, her school offers theater, and that is everything, that, the school, okay, but also the theater that I get to do. So
right.
That's
and if
great too.
If they don't know about these programs, they don't have the opportunity to get excited about it before school starts. And if they're excited
Right.
about something in school, that transition is going to be so much smoother. So not only do they get to connect with their community, they also they're imagining reinforcement in the future for them there, right? And so that just definitely helps with the anxiety and the nerves. So for the second strategy, it's creating routines. And I said create routines as if the school year's already started. So we're talking about your morning routines, the sleep schedule, bedtime routines. And of course, as a mental health person, I'm going to throw in an emotional check-in routine, because I think that's an opportunity to develop stronger attachment with their parents. They can come to, or their caregivers, they can come to these to their attachment figures, express what's going on with them at school, and have a chance to be heard, right? And be able to process these things. And if you're going to create this routine, if this strategy is something you're going to use, please start it at least a week or two before school starts. So for example, if you're going to do a sleep schedule routine, you're going to start adjusting your child's sleep schedule a week or two before school starts, so that you gradually move their bedtime up in their wake up times earlier. So I like to do 30-minute increments because it doesn't feel as jarring. So I'm a parent of a 9-year-old, and summers we stay up late. So she usually goes to bed around 10, and I have to admit sometimes even later, right? And so with that, it would be rough if I kept her on this later schedule, and then the first day of school comes around and all of a sudden she's like, having to go to bed an hour and a half earlier. So that's what I'm saying. 30-minute increments a week or so beforehand is better for her system. It's better for a biological clock, and it gets her in a better mindset when it happens. And sometimes with our neurodivergent kids, we need to start even earlier than a week. Maybe we need 2 weeks. So for our morning routine, I'm going to have to start earlier because she gets up around 8:30 or 9, but we have to get up around 7 once school starts. So I'm going to give myself at least 2 weeks to do this slow integration where we're moving her wake up time and 30 minutes earlier every couple of days until I get to that set time at 7. So it's the same as it will be when school starts. So that's one strategy you can use with the routine. And I just have to mention that sleep is so incredibly important just for living, right? So when I work with folks, I ask them first about their sleep schedule, their diet, and their exercise. And we know from neuroscience that if you don't get enough sleep, especially for the developing mind, it impairs cognitive functioning, memory, emotional regulation. And my experience is that with our kiddos who are neurodivergent, there's a sensitivity too with their sleep schedules and it being disrupted. So this is an important concept to consider and to promote with your child.
Absolutely. And we know neuroscience tells us, I think it's fairly recent neuroscience about neuroplasticity, that's actually when those neuroplastic connections are made is during sleep. So we do a lot of intensive training at our centers, and we have to tell our parents and our students, like, they have to sleep. They may even be sleeping longer, and so you gotta allot for that, because that's when the magic happens, that's when those neurons, those pathways are happening. Yeah. Right. I will admit I struggle with that one with my own kids. We are also night owls, and that transition is hard. So we definitely need to take the full 2 weeks. Yeah.
It's important to talk about it though, like in webinars such as this, so that we can normalize that. It's not always so easy. It's easy to talk about and it's harder to apply. And so I'm very sensitive to that, but it is so necessary. And there's a lot of, research out there that tells you developmentally at what age, how much sleep they should have as well. Right. So when you're creating these routines, like your morning routine, your bedtime routine, we're keeping in mind that we are still basing this around that allotted amount of hours that they were supposed to get, right? So bedtime, when we get to that part, is going to be timed accordingly, right? So that you can make sure they can get the full 8 hours. And like teenagers, they need to sleep even more, right? Than our that's so shocking to me, because they're the ones that sleep the least amount and they need it the most. And so Yeah, keep that in mind, folks, when you're creating these routines, the timing of it. You want to lean into the there's the AAP, the pediatrics, to give the recommendations on the developmental milestones and sleep recommendations. So I put in an example up here of a morning routine, and I pulled this from just this awesome website, justfamilyfun.com, and I put that in the resources as well for parents to use if they're interested in this particular strategy. And you can create it. They give you these free templates, and you put in accordingly what your morning routine is going to look like, so that our kiddos have an idea of like, when I get up, this is what I'm going to do. When I put my shoes on, I know I'm out the door, right? So it just gives them just some normalcy, some familiarity, and you can start this before school starts. So they can start to feel the connection to the movement of these routines, because it's so jarring if at summer you're in your pajamas until like 10, 11, and then all of a sudden you're rushing a kid out at 7:30 and they have to do all these things. So exercise the brain, get them to practice so that it becomes intrinsic. So this is just an example. Of course, for our older kiddos, I would recommend that, make it more developmentally appropriate. They probably don't want to see the happy face sunshine and might think it's a little juvenile for like a 16-year-old, but teenagers benefit from their morning routines as well. And of course, doing it collaboratively. It's so much more fun, so much more meaningful to our kids if they have a voice in this process. All right, so for the next slide, I offered another example of activities that are used for bedtime routines. And these particular activities that I have listed here have been endorsed with research saying that these specific ones actually help in benefits their sleep more than other ones. So if you're going to pick and choose a couple, maybe 3 or 4 of them, ideally choose the ones that have been shown to really work. Like I actually asked my daughter today when I was looking at this, I was like, do you want me to sing to you? And no, she didn't want that. She definitely wants the massage and the cuddling, because she's a sensory seeker herself. And so this is like, it helps her so much. So it's like, I get her input in creating this, even my slides. So, this is another routine to consider, the bedtime routine. And like I mentioned earlier, being mindful of the recommended hours of sleep. You want to start this at the same time so that you're done by the time you want them to start falling asleep. So by the time they wake up, they have the recommended 8 to 10 hours. So bath, snack, brushing teeth, reading book, cuddling, and then it all ends with a kiss and a good night, and you leave. And some tips that the website offered, which is also in the resources that I'm sharing with everyone tonight. It talks about dimming the lights in your home about an hour before bedtime, stopping any digital input an hour beforehand so that their brain can get into that mindset of the bedtime routine. So I thought that was a nice tip to for us to know as parents, because sometimes my child asked to watch 10 more minutes of something on her iPad. And it's going to, now it's a house rule. No, at this time, if I need her to be pretty much falling asleep at 9, 8 o'clock is when we stop. So that's a personal example of how I apply this. And you folks out there with your children will cater that according to your routines at home and how your family system works. And the daily emotional check-in routine, this is just one example of many. In the resource I shared, they give you different versions of ways to have like a check-in for just the emotional well-being of your child. So with this one, I like this for younger kiddos because it has those faces that they see at the doctor's office, right? So it's already familiar. And then you ask them, I feel this way because of something, and then something that might help. And so a little bit of problem solving to exercise that muscle. It's something we should always encourage with our children, is problem solving, especially because they can become so dependent on the adults in their life to choose for them. And then anything else I'd like to share, it's like this opening to like, okay, let's make this more normal. You can share whatever's on your mind. Ideally, we want to do these routines at more opportune times of the day. So not necessarily when they're going to sleep, right? Because this could end up being a 45-minute conversation. I mean, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, it could be a lot longer, depending on how expressive your child is. And if your goal is to get them to sleep by a certain time, maybe let's not mess with that routine there, right? With this one. So I like to do this and embed it during other natural routines, like when my child's having a snack, or when they're done with their homework. They just can kind of expect that we're going to do this. And even at some point, if the child does not want to talk about it, you honor it, right? You can, but you still share this as part of the routine so that they know that the support is there and available to them every single day. And it's such a beautiful attachment process for a parent and a child at the same time. Now, most importantly, as you're doing this emotional check-in as a caregiver, is to be mindful of validation. Are we validating their experience? Are we unintentionally invalidating their experience? So if, for example, if someone says, a child says, I feel this way about my teacher because she's mean, right? And the parent says, no, she's not. She's just overwhelmed. There's like 25 kids in there. She's just doing the best she can. It's like, but it's not about the teacher right now. It's about your child figuring out what's coming up for her. So there is definitely time for constructive feedback and perspective taking with our children, but I ask that we choose different times to take note of that and address it. So just take a mental note and make sure that we circle back to it so they can be more expansive in their perspective taking, but not during this emotional check-in.
Okay. I love this so much. And this helps with language development as well. And just self-expression. I know a lot of times our kids really struggle with, they might have a feeling, but they can't identify it, and so in the beginning, I would expect a lot of kiddos to not be able to, I'm pointing to the mad face and, oh, tell me why I don't know, or I just do, or, something like that. But making it a process and a routine, eventually seeing, that evolve and the child better able to express himself. And then validation of whatever.
Validation is a tricky one. We don't even realize that we're invalidating our just people in our relationships or just in general. And I just want to note, if feelings is difficult for your child to express, there's plenty of books out there, like feelings books. They can even choose it. There's recommendations on Amazon, a lot of endorsed books by therapists on how to teach the neurodivergent community how to identify emotions. So if you need to do some prerequisites before you jump into this check-in, then please do so, because they learn quick, and this is so necessary for navigating through school. It's understanding their own emotional states so they don't get overwhelmed. And this third strategy is exposure and advanced planning. So what this strategy will do is support our children in preparing for the unknown. There's a lot of unknowns in transitioning back to school. New classrooms, potentially new students, new configurations with our desks, depending on how sensitive our child is. That can be very triggering, just changing the room up. And doing this kind of advanced planning and exposure work, the goal is to reduce that anxiety by this desensitization process. And I'll get into more of the details in the next few slides. So desensitization to their school environment. What that means is we're going to expose them physically to their world to come, right? To school. We're going to show them the route to school, drop off, pickups, not just talk about it, because not all of our kiddos are auditory learners. They need to see it. They need to feel it in the car, drive there, show them, say, hey, this is where they told me the kids stand, right? There's going to be some nuance if it's their first year at the school, right? Because you don't know yet, but do your best to get to front load them with that information by asking the administration at the school. You can also go onto the campus and tour like the most important main areas, like cafeterias, their library, the recess area. Recess can be overwhelming for a lot of our kiddos, just because there's a lot of balls being thrown, a lot of sounds, a lot of different personalities, and it can be a very stressful place for them. So show them where it is, and also try to highlight some areas they can go to if they need breaks. as they're at the on the playground, or if they need if they just need a little downtime, right? They just have to move away from the kids. Sometimes they don't know what to do. So help them by desensitizing them, and that actually talks a little bit about problem solving, but you can throw that into this equation while you're out there. Show them where their sensory room is if they're on a sensory diet. Bathrooms, especially bathrooms, if they get lost and they have a hard time asking for help, at least they know where it is so they can get there. If they're older, show them where their lockers are. So just do everything that you think is relevant to them at school. Reflect as a parent on your time in school. What did you need, right? And that's what Seth Perler mentions in his podcast with Jill Stowell recently. I encourage everyone to read that, because at the 4-minute mark, there's a segment about parents. And he gives so many wonderful strategies on how to talk about these things, how to talk as a parent about what did I need as a child. And so I'm going to talk to you as your dad or your mom or your grandma about what I thought was helpful for me. So use those strategies from this podcast too. There's just this wealth of information, and it's an incredible episode.
And then Megan posted the link. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So you could, so that people can access that, because it really is helpful developing, I guess, that metacognition for our kiddos, like just being aware of their, what their needs are, and then what to do about that.
Yeah. And then we as parents, we don't have to necessarily figure it out intuitively. You have an expert like Seth who just breaks it down so beautifully. So I would encourage you to follow his lead on some of those strategies, because they're so incredibly helpful, and you're not alone in this. And there are a lot of parents asking the same questions, and you don't even know what you don't know to even ask. So just inform yourself and just be an open learner, be inquisitive, and you'll be surprised at how much is available to you. So as you're going through these key components on the campus, if you don't know where to go, reference that podcast and think back to when I was a kid, where did I get lost, right? Use your own personal references. So, I mean, high school is really hard, transitioning into high school and getting lost. And I went to a high school where they intentionally would make the freshmen just stress out and tell them the wrong directions all the time. I don't know what the upperclassmen, why they enjoyed that, but that was a part of the culture there. Now, this one isn't always accessible to students as far as visiting the teacher or the classroom, but if you do have an IEP or a 504 plan, a lot of time that's just embedded in it. Like, they're going to have some communication with the teacher. They're going to know where the classroom is. And advanced planning ahead. This can look like even just purchasing school supplies, like going and shopping together. How easy is it for us as caregivers to just go buy the stuff because we're just at Target anyways, right? But I'm going to ask you to take a step back, and a week or so before school starts, ideally before a week, because it gets crazy with the shopping, with back to school shopping. But before that, involve your child so they can start thinking about it. That is even helping them ready themselves for this big transition that's coming up. They can choose things that they like, the colors, themes, types of pens, types of pencils. Some even have like fidgets that are built in, things that are fun for them. Sometimes that backfires and the teachers don't like that, but I'm just saying, like, you can get them excited about this. Yeah. And then scheduling extracurricular activities, like knowing that, oh, hey, basketball starts in the fall. That's going to be when school starts. Start pairing like these other transitions that they're more excited about with school. Say, oh, this happens this time and you're going to go after school. And you just start making it kind of just so common, and you normalize it that it's just a smooth transition because they're already in the mindset of being excited. So just talk about those extracurricular. Again, this one might backfire if you say, well, you're going to start tutoring right after school. Maybe they're not going to be as excited. Like my daughter, she's in Kumon and she doesn't necessarily love it. And so I wouldn't use that as a way to motivate her. But basketball, some of the clubs, some swimming, things that she enjoys more. So that's something to think about too. Now, I wanted to take a moment to answer some questions as we're assimilating all this information. I'd love to clarify or just address any concerns. I set aside about 10 minutes for this. And so I'm wondering, do we have some questions ready at this point?
We should. I just wanted to, I mean, so far these are great strategies, and it's a
Thank you.
lot of, I could see the intention with the front loading, just knowing that our neurodiverse kids lack some of these skills in planning or in maybe cognitive flexibility. We definitely see that in our centers. And so front loading is really important, like setting the stage or helping them alongside them to plan, you know, because those skills may not be solid for them yet. And so that reduces that stress response, reduces that anxiety, because we know it's going to happen. We know that if something goes wrong, we have a partner there in our caregiver to help us out, you know, kind of all of those what if that come with it, any kind of a transition, those what ifs. These are really great strategies. I mean, routine and knowing the expectations ahead of time. I love that. I always recommend to our parents who do have IEPs or 504s, they usually do have a transition meeting at the end of a school year. Always ask for that, you know, if we're transitioning to a different school, can we do a preview day? Can we get a map of the school so that we can map it out? All those kinds of things to really help our kids be successful. It's not, you know, it's not supposed to be a guessing game, right? It's, you know,
And most of the time it is, right?
yeah, I mean, God. So
and it's not easy on anyone, right? And so we
right.
can step in and offer this extra support. And then if you're doing the emotional check-ins, they have a soft cushion to land on emotionally. Even if they don't know how to express it, they know someone's there that wants to hear them, that will validate them. Yeah.
Yes, so important. That's so important for, you know, strengthening your relationship and just, you know, knowing that you're there as their ally,
Exactly.
as their parent or caregiver. Okay, let's see. I think Megan is gonna go through the questions and see if anybody, you know, has questions or clarification and what you've been sharing with us so far.
Yes, thank you, Lauren. And thank you, Sherri. A lot of great information. And, you know, again, parents, feel free to answer or put in your questions so we can answer them. There was a question about whether or not this will be recorded, so that way they can rewatch this, because obviously a lot of great information. The answer is yes. We will be sending out a recording for everybody who registered for the webinar. So if you're present, you will get a copy of it. And then Amanda had a question about she would love to hear some tips you might have for her neurodivergent child who will be entering kindergarten this year. She's a little bit worried about the extra high anxiety from going from a developmental pre-K of only maybe 9 children to 20 children. So Sherri, do you have any recommendations or information on that?
Yes. So, and it's actually going to, the next 2 strategies will be supportive to this as well. But getting in touch with the teacher sooner, right? Talking about that, knowing the teacher's name, maybe even if you can get a picture of the teacher so they can start seeing who that person is, talking about what's in a classroom, looking at videos of kindergartners in the classroom. Developmentally, you can even start highlighting books that you know are going to be in the classroom. You're like, oh, look, this one's going to be, this one's one for kindergarten. I wonder if it's going to be in your classroom, like building that anticipation, because it is going to be all there. And then really communicating with the school staff of like, this is my child's needs. These are his or her strengths. These are some places that are triggering for her and challenging, and having that kind of collaboration with your team. And this goes back to this social and emotional learning. We're connecting your child to her community so that she can feel safe and know, especially at that young age, know that outside of mom and dad or whomever is caretaking, there are like a huge number of people in their school setting that want to take care of her needs or his needs. And so really start talking about that language or using that language around your child, and knowing if your child is neurodivergent and has like an IEP or a 504 plan, who's on their team assigned to them. Is there a case manager, speech, OT, all of those folks, and see if you can connect with them so that you know their names. You can start saying to your child their names, that maybe even look up pictures of them. So just really starting to expose them. So that goes into the planning and exposing. You're going to communicate and plan ahead to connect, and then expose them to the routines, the people, what they do, and what to expect. Now, will it reduce all anxiety? Absolutely not, right? Anxiety is it's human nature, right? But we just like to keep it in range. So the point of this is not to hope that they don't have fear or just maybe even moments of panic around this, but that it's manageable and that you know what to do as an empowered parent of how to support and hold space for it and walk them through it. So using those strategies, planning, exposure, mindful of your own language of how you talk about it. And I'll go into more strategies to support it in the next 2 strategies for her.
Wonderful. And we have a question. I'm sorry, Lauren, did you have something?
No, I was just going to add, this is just coming from someone who taught kindergarten a long time ago. Kindergarten teachers, definitely everything that Sherri said, like reiterate that relationship and front loading and connecting with the team. Kindergarten teachers expect a certain level of chaos for those 2 weeks. It's hard for all those kids, neurotypical, neurodivergent. It's a transition. And so that, is also something, there should be a lot of communication no matter what, because it is a big transition. And I'm hoping, if your child's teacher does teach kindergarten, that they know that it's to be expected, that it is a huge sensory demand on all kids, but especially our neurodivergent kids. Something else that for my child, when she started TK, that took a toll on her was the emotionality of other kids in the room. And so we had to specifically front load. So if you know that there are certain triggers, definitely communicate that to the teacher. But that also was hard on those first few days. There were a lot of kids crying. And so we needed to prepare for that, because it is a hard transition for everyone. And what are we going to do? And can we be a good friend? Can we be a helper? That was really empowering too. So that's just my 2 cents as someone who has been there on the first day of kindergarten.
And since you were a teacher there, it makes you have such a important perspective in that you see how a parent handles it and how that it impacts a child as they're transitioning. I understand that kindergarten, personally, and just by witnessing other parents, is an extremely difficult transition, because it's really their first time going into what they call, real school, quote unquote, real school, right? They can handle, preschool, but once they're in kindergarten, something is stirring. And I've seen parents just bawling, right? When they drop their kids off, and you can't stop the emotions, but if you know that's going to be you, because the thought of it already makes you teary, go ahead and start talking about it so they don't think they're in danger, right? Yeah. So it would be like, I am watching my little one grow up, and sometimes I get emotional because I can't believe how quick it's going. And going back into social emotional learning, I'm just so excited to watch you grow. But sometimes it just makes me emotional, right?
Yeah.
And versus I'm so scared to let you go, and things of that nature. So that's an opportunity to really check in with yourself and front load. All of this is very proactive.
Thank you. And one more question before we go back to our strategies. Erica has a question. Her child is not on an IEP yet, but is wondering, should she email her soon to be 6th grade teachers before starting middle school?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more you communicate and front load, the better. Now, does that mean that, well, like in middle school, it's specific if you don't have a case manager, because that's usually assigned when you have a 504 or an IEP specifically, but they have a homeroom teacher that's assigned, and I would start there. Just calling the school and asking if you can just communicate to someone just to let them know a little bit more about their child. And then also you can always call a meeting with the school psychologist or the homeroom teacher, the principal. You can always call for those extra helps, extra supports in those meetings in the beginning if you're starting to see some challenges that you feel helpless with and don't know how to manage. But definitely reach out.
Okay, thank you. So that questions are still coming in, but we will have another opportunity for Q&A at the end after the next two strategies.
Yeah. Now, some of this is going to be repetitive because we were already talking about it in the questions, but I think it's great to repeat this stuff. So this fourth strategy is teach your child to problem solve. So like what Lauren said about talking to her daughter about the emotionality of other students, that's problem solving. What do you do with that energy when you see someone kind of having an emotional moment? It empower your child to know how to support someone she cares about. And maybe it's a friend of hers, or maybe it's not, and she's just a feeler and she wants to be there for people. So give her some tools, just talk about it. And if she doesn't know, then that's where these emotional check-ins come in. What else do you want to talk about? Hopefully those conversations will kind of happen organically. You're going to find some of these conversations happen outside of the check-in, and it doesn't matter. Seize any opportunity. There's your emotional check-in, even if it's outside of your routine time, but teach them to problem solve. If they need to go to the bathroom, go through some scripts on what do. You raise your hand and you say the words, like literally have them say the words to you so that they can practice the rehearsal. And it could be any situation. If you need a break and the playground, you go up to the yard duty person and say, can I sit over here? So just kind of have some foresight on what you think could potentially happen for your child based on their temperament, how they are, how their tendencies are, their personalities, their thresholds. Do they get overstimulated rather easily? Start talking about that. And then again, reflect on when you were a kid in school and think about, I would have loved it if a teacher said this to me. I would have loved if my parents told me to do this when I was feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes our kiddos feel so isolated with whatever they're processing. And so giving them like this antecedent strategy, this proactive strategy, is so helpful for them to add to their toolbox so they can cope better. And again, all of this again leads to social and emotional learning. And then a very straightforward way is to identify authority figures that can help them at school. Maybe they don't know, they don't know who the yard duty people are, or they don't know, they can go up to this person in the office. Just say, if there's any adult here, you can go there. This is the office. These are the yard duty folks. They have you. I asked my daughter today, I said, do your yard duty people, do they have those vests on, like the fluorescent vests on? She's like, yes. I was like, okay, good. That's who you go talk to. So during when you're dropping off your child, look around and point it out in the moment, a real live moment. Be like, oh, see, there's one of those. There's one of the yard duty people that can help you if you need it. Do you remember how you talked to me about if you need to go to the bathroom or you get lost, and you're worried about it? Do you think that could be someone that you could ask? And I phrase it that way because I want it to be more of child-led than parent-led as far as problem solving. So you guide it. You say, what do you think? Do you think that person could? And if they don't know, then step in, fill in the gap. But if they can come up with the answer themselves for these problem solving like challenges, it's going to stick and land much more strongly for them than it would with mom saying everything or dad saying everything to them, because it's talking at them versus talking with them. And they will tune us out. That's just part of being a child. We say a lot, so just keep that in mind. And then this last strategy, which is what I touched on a little bit in the Q&A, which is as parents really using proactive communication. IEP 504 or not, you are the advocate for your child. Neurotypical, neurodivergent, doesn't matter. You can go out of your way. You don't have to wait for the school to invite you. You feel free. This is your child. Feel free to insert yourself, right? Be collaborative, obviously, but reach out to the teacher if they have a case manager, a behavioral team, if they have aides, even if they don't, just reach out and just say, I'd like to introduce myself. This is my child. You don't have to give, the specifics on the way they think necessarily, like a diagnosis or whatever, but if it's relevant, bring it up. My child likes to move a lot, needs more breaks, just start saying it. See, these are the things that I've learned and I know, and I want to share them with you. Now, sometimes teachers are going to receive it well, and sometimes they're so overwhelmed they're not hearing it. So please feel free to say it again, right? As advocates for your kiddos, just politely and respectfully let them know that you're part of this team and it's not all on them, that you want to be a part of contributing to the knowledge that's going to benefit your child. So like I said, specifics. If you know your child tends to get overwhelmed with loud noises, let the teacher know, right? And say, this is what I told my child to do when he or she gets overwhelmed. And her overwhelm looks like this. She will stop talking, or he will start crying, or she will start wiggling, or sometimes he will get aggressive, whatever the case may be, right? But let them know so that you can already start to problem solve together from the school side and the parental caregiver side to offer best supports. And what I also love to do is, after I make these proactive communication efforts, I let my child know I did it, right? So I'm just like, oh, I contacted a teacher and I said, sometimes this happens, and she knows. So I want you to go and ask her. She said yes. Ask her if you need help, and I'll show her. See, she said yes. Like, she said yes, she'll help you. And then guess what? Anxiety goes down. Mm-hmm. They start to feel connected. You're showing them that they can trust the world outside of their immediate family. So those are some proactive strategies I had in mind. And then for the parents and caregivers here tonight, what are some specific strategies you can implement immediately? Out of all of the ones that I've shared, there's a handful of examples, and there's going to be a handful of examples in that podcast that I recommended as well, if you choose to go in that direction. So what are 3 that you can do immediately, like tonight, tomorrow, and the next few days? School's coming up pretty quick, so the ask is that we jump in sooner than later, right? So an example of my plan of action is, I'm going to start this earlier sleep routine tonight. Actually, I started it a couple of days ago. And then emailing the teacher once I find out the teacher's name. I'm not waiting for her to give me the meet and greet. I'm going to go ahead and email her and let her know. And then I use our eating time as a way to discuss emotions, because I can get intense as a therapist with my child, asking her a lot of questions. And I've learned from her feedback that it's too much. So I said, okay, when we sit down and have this snack, this is what we're going to do. And if she doesn't have anything to say, again, like I said, I validate that and we move on. But I assure you, when she needs something, she comes back because she knows I'm ready and willing and waiting to hear her. So those are some examples of like my action plan. The ask is that you as parents jot down a couple that you want to do. And I highly encourage you writing it down, because the research shows in cognitive behavioral therapy that the shifts really happen when you make that extra effort to write something down. So you don't have to, but I'm putting it out there. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and write it down, so that, and if you need help in creating it, and you can obviously reference the recording, but there's going to be resources provided to you that are very, very thorough and in-depth, and you can just on your own time look it up and pick and choose what speaks to you in these resources as a way to support you implementing these strategies. And so we have some more time for some Q&A, if that's okay right now. Yeah. Because those are the 5 strategies. That's it, folks. That's it.
That's not it. It's a lot. I mean, it's
right
really
now.
helpful. Yeah, I know. It's so great. And it's, it's just, you knew where everybody was thinking with that, kind of preparing for the school year and a proactive plan for communicating with teachers. I mean, that's kind of on all our minds. And it looks like Megan is providing the resources in the chat.
Great. Thank you.
And we will also provide those in the recording with the replay when we send that out tomorrow. So let's see, Megan, more questions?
Yes, we have some more questions. And again, such great information. Sarah has a question though. She says her son is got a 504, is ADHD combined and GAD last year, and he's been allowed to bring a fidget. Do you have a recommendation for an online store or in Pasadena that I could take him to choose something? So any recommendations? You may not be familiar with the Pasadena area, but maybe something that's online.
I have with a lot of my clients, I've asked them to look up online, just type in fidgets, right? And the resources are vast, and you just click and you do it collaboratively with your child, and they will tell you which ones they like. There's some trial and error as well. Like I've chosen like just like something on Amazon that had a ton of different kinds of fidgets, and they pick and choose which ones I kind of scratch that itch, and then they eliminate it. You know, there's some specific companies that are just sensory fidgets and toys. It doesn't come to mind right now exactly what their title is, but I just know that if you look it up, you're going to have a list that just that show up, and you just click and research, and you'll see what works for you. And you can also do some price comparisons as well with these different companies. But Amazon is an easy way to get just a beginner's like collection of fidgets. I also love like the Theraputty. I'll let my just neurotypical just children in general, they just love it. And sometimes it helps them think and talk, and I let them play with that. And if they have any OT, like fine motor issues, get the one that's more firm, so that they just, when they're playing with it, it's strengthening their hands. And that's what an OT has told me that I've worked with. If handwriting or anything like that is something that you're concerned about, try to find fidgets that require actions with their muscles in their hands, with their arms. You can also even consult with an OT specifically on which ones would be most beneficial to the needs of the child, because everyone has different sensory needs. Some have they want heavier weight. Maybe they need something to wiggle around in their seat. Maybe they just need something for their hands. Even toys that require like pinching and picking up things that way. Like it's not necessarily a fidget toy, but something fun to do. And they can use it as a fidget toy if they want, which strengthens their hands. But those are just a couple of examples that come to mind. Anything more specific, I would, you can contact me, and then we can speak to the specific needs in more detail.
Thank you. And then we had another question from Mitra, might be Mitra. My son, who has an IEP, started kindergarten on July 19th, and he is way behind his classmates who are neurotypical. Should I get him a tutor? Academically, he is behind all of his classmates.
And I'm sorry, did you say kindergarten?
Yes. I
would initiate a meeting with the teacher and the school team first, and collaborate with them on what best approaches to take. Right. So, and if there is a specific learning need that needs to be assessed and tested for, that's how you start it, so that you know what kind of intervention is needed to get him on track.
And definitely want to make sure that even if there's already an IEP in place, that it's meeting his needs in this new environment. If kindergarten is new, we can kind of guess and check it, and make accommodations, but it is something you have the right, as a parent, on it with a child that has an IEP, you have a right to call that meeting anytime and to adjust, to look at those things, because, we try to plan. The purpose of an IEP is to give our kiddos, a success plan and an intervention plan. But sometimes the needs change depending on the classroom that year and the child's own individual needs. So you definitely have that right to do that.
Yeah, exercise that right. That is your role as a parent, to be that advocate. And it's so helpful once you realize there's so much support available that maybe they haven't executed yet, right? Because they don't know this is happening. So as a parent, when you share that information, you're giving them even more insight. Ideally, you want to think that maybe the teacher knows everything about all the needs of your child, and they do to an extent, but you as the parent know even more, as far as like, no, the right handwriting isn't changing, or this concept when we read, this isn't happening. So what's the plan here? Will you share with me how I can support this at home? Teachers love that. They want the parents to help at home. So if you could just like lean in, collaborate, and look at your teachers and school staff as partners that are supporting your child. Sometimes sometimes what I've seen is parents look at them as adversaries, that they're failing their child. But I really want to shift and reframe that and saying, what's the area of need, and why as a team we're not getting there, right? And so you're actually going to execute your own problem solving strategies with that, right? So if you could keep that in mind, that when you address the teachers with respect and support, and and empathy to understand that they're managing a lot. You get a lot further, you get further a lot faster that way. And to know that nobody is out to fail your child, right, at the school. So that's some of the sense I get from parents, is that they feel like the school is like actively wrong, like just doing all these wrong things to their children. And I think they are missing the mark, but it's more about a growth mindset and shifting things so that it can move in a better direction. And that's collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. All right. And we have just one final question from Erica. She has a very smart third grader, but has had some challenges in the past with being social with children her age. So is there anything that you can advise her to help her with that?
Sure. So social skill development, there's social skill groups, there's social skill books, there's programs like at the school that a lot of times their counselors are putting together. Maybe it's not launched right when school starts, but you can inquire about that. Ask the admin team at the school if they have anything like that. Even counselors are available to support the kiddos if they're having social skill difficulties, even just to process what's going on. And you can also resource out to work with mental health professionals that understand how to teach social skills and address if it is a social anxiety thing versus a skill deficit, just discerning what the differences are and how to address it. And they can help you from that angle as well, and teach the parents how to implement implement that skill in real time when they're with kids and engaging. So definitely lean into your resources at school and the mental health field to support you with that.
Thank you. And we got one last minute question, and Sherri, if you're not able to fully answer it, we can always reach out to this individual personally. But Abby has a question about, how do we help our son to best manage his homework load? He's a fifth grader with extracurricular activities like sports. He's a struggling student with attention deficit. He has a 504 in place. Do we continue to use that avenue and ask for max homework minutes per night? We have done this, but it's still a struggle for both the teacher and the student.
Okay, so fifth grade, I'm thinking about that age. Executive functioning, as far as with ADHD, executive functioning can be challenging, period, with ADHD. And so finding supports with an ADHD coach that specializes in teaching executive functioning. There's therapists also that specialize in teaching executive functioning. My experience in working with kiddos with this type of hardship is that the teacher doesn't necessarily have all the answers to support the child all the way through and managing these specific nuances. You can obviously share it with the teacher, lean into the 504, ask for extra time, ask for maybe even just any type of accommodations that can be there with the homework. But from my experience, the need is greater than what the school can provide when it comes to executive functioning and leaning into other outside resources.
Yeah,
and you can ask the school team too if they have any recommendations, if they know anyone, because believe me, that's not the first child that's in that school with that particular issue. So they probably have a list of resources for the parents as well.
We see it all the time, even neurotypical kids that just the amount of homework. Is that reinforcing skills, or is that busy work? I mean, you don't want to, rub a teacher the wrong way and be like, well, you're just assigning busy work, but it'd be, important to have that conversation with the teacher and really kind of, what's the intention? What kind of skills are we trying to build with this homework? Can we do something in an appropriate amount of time that would get us closer to that goal, that will reinforce those skills that we want to reinforce. And even that is an executive function development strategy of going through and analyzing, okay, here's what we need to do. These are the skills we're trying to build. How should we go about doing that? You can do alongside your child with teacher permission, teacher guidance.
Yeah.
The other thing would be is if there is some kind of learning challenge. This is what we do all day long. If there is some kind of learning challenge like dyslexia, a reading problem, you also, want to get that addressed as well, to just take the pressure off, because a lot of times those kids, reading takes a lot longer. It's a lot more effortful. It's a lot more stressful. and can we make that process faster? So
Exactly.
cleaning up those underlying learning skills, is
So you
definitely our recommendation.
start with your school team, right? And then if you're not making a lot of headway that way, you can start expanding your reach, right? Because there's a lot of resources out there. I know I have parents that have put their children in vision therapy that the school never even recommended or thought about, and it's changed everything for her learning, for the students' learning. So be open, be inquisitive, read about it, research it. You'll find a lot of different options that you can feel your way through. And if you need help filtering through it, lead into other professionals that work in the field of like ADHD, executive functioning, so that you can get a little bit more specialized and tailored guidance.
Okay, thank you. So that wraps up our questions, and I know we're coming up to time here. So Sherri, I'll let you continue.
And second part series. So next week, same time, same place, going over consultation of how it went, applying some of the strategies that you chose to practice with your child. I can answer general questions about the presentation, address maybe some barriers, and I'd love to hear some success stories too, if you've had some, right? Like to inspire other parents. So we'll have another hour webinar next week to get into that.
Great. I'm gonna also wrap up and go on mute because I have small kiddos who are coming home right now. But I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's about to get loud, Sherri, for this. This was a wealth of information. Definitely something that parents will want to watch or listen to again on the recording, and you all can expect that sometime tomorrow to get a recap. As well as join us next week to continue the conversation and try some things out, ask more in-depth questions about some of the strategies that you've implemented. But thank you so much, Sherri. This was amazing. And just even, for all parents, I mean, parents. It's a crazy time of the year. We totally get that. So thank you so much for this wisdom. And for anyone who is interested in doing, wanting to explore learning and attention challenges further, we also offer a free consultation. You can schedule that at stowellcenter.com to speak with a learning specialist and just really dive in. What are those underlying skills that might be impacting your child's success in school or the transition back to school, anxiety with school, all those things. And that's what we do. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And Sherri, do you have a slide with your contact information as well? There we go. Perfect. So for anybody who has any questions specifically for Sherri, that's how you will contact her. And thank you both again so much for being involved in this. I know this information has been so helpful. And for all the families, parents that are watching right now, you have these amazing strategies. Feel free to reach out and let us know how they're going, but we'd really love to hear about how it went next week. Same time, same place, 5 o'clock on Wednesday. And for all the parents that your children are going back to school, good luck with these strategies, and remember to give yourself grace as well. So we'll see you next week at 5 o'clock. All right. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.